If you guys take a cursory look at the internet, you can probably find answers to each of these questions, right? And so like, to try and make this a little bit more substantial for everyone, if you guys have followed my stuff at all, then understanding the definition of learning I think is important. And so I define learning as same circumstance, different behavior, which means that if you continue to act the same way in the same circumstance, you have learned nothing. And so if you go through a semester and your circumstances have not changed and neither has your behavior, you have learned nothing. So the fact that you have knowledge in your head but you do nothing with it means you actually haven't learned anything. And so I think that is useful when paired with the definition of intelligence, which is rate of learning. So somebody who learns slowly is not intelligent or less intelligent than someone who learns quickly. And that means that if you change your behavior quickly, you are intelligent. If you do not change your behavior quickly, you are less intelligent, which is different than probably what most of the academic world teaches. But I can promise you in the real world, that is what matters, which is how quickly can you adapt? How quickly can somebody put you in a situation and say, you have a list of phone names in front of you, and when the person picks up the phone, same condition, how shitty are you? And if you get better over time, it means that the next time someone answers the phone when you call them, you do better, which means that you have learned, which means you are intelligent. And if it takes somebody much longer to do that, then they are less intelligent because they have not learned. Does that make sense? If I get like nods or waves or thumbs ups, that'd be, because I can't hear anything. Cool. So I'm kind of talking to my face. That's my own face right now.
Okay, so
no, you're good. And I just want to set that as the stage because like, it's kind of the reason I mentioned Mateem's question, which is like, how is this going to change your behavior at all? Right? Like, what is the unexpected reward? Is like, to your point, is it you not feeling motivated? You want more reward at the end of it? Because I would say like business has shitloads of rewards in it. So like, if you need another one, why? So I'll go to Amber, your question, which was how to make the big decisions. All right, and so that is arguably the single most important thing that you do in life, because the decisions that you make are the things that you get the most leverage on. So leverage is the difference between inputs and outputs in a system. So if you do little inputs and you get lots of output, you have high leverage. If you have lots of input and little output, then you have low leverage, right? And so our goal is to put as few inputs in and get as much output out. And that's how you continue to trade up in the game of business and career-wise, income-wise, whatever. And so if you're trying to, or if I am trying to make a big decision, I factor in, it's basically just risk-adjusted return. And what that means is like, okay, there might be a 10x, 100x, and 1,000x potential, outcome here. What is the likelihood of each of these outcomes? And based on that, I'll make my bet. And I would say for me, I tend to take higher probability bets than lower probability bets. So like if I had a 1 in 100 shot at $100 million, right? Or at 100% shot at $1 million, I would probably take the million. Probably to make it a little bit more, a better example, if I had a 1 in 100 shot at 500 million, so it'd be 5 times the risk-adjusted return versus the 100% for $1 million, I would still probably do the million. I tend to be that way. And that's why risk is very much of an individual kind of thing. Like the idea that I would spend X amount of time on an opportunity and have a low likelihood of payout, it works from a portfolio perspective. So if you're investing and you have 5 different things, then the risk-adjusted return matters a lot. But when you're the one of one and you spend 8 years on something and then it does not pan out and you get a 0, it's tough. And so for me, I'd rather have higher probability wins stack, and then I will take bigger and bigger bets as I do not need the win. Basically, the more I need the win, the higher the probability bet I'm going to make. Does that make sense? And so in Jeff Bezos has one of my favorite quotes about this, but he says, I'm paraphrasing, but basically the difference is in baseball, you can, no matter how hard you hit the ball, you can only score 4 runs, right? It's a grand slam. But in business, sometimes you can hit the ball so hard that you get 1,000 runs. And so it's the long tail distribution of returns, which is what makes business so interesting. But if you have a bet where you get 100 times payout and it's a 1 out of 10 shot, you should take the bet every time, but you know that you're going to be wrong 9 out of 10 times. The difficulty with that assessment is that it assumes you have unlimited tries. And so to calibrate the investment or risk is not that you have a 1 out of 10 shot on a 100x return, because if you did that, for sure, go bet 10 times, then you'll probably get the 100x return. But if you only have 3 coins to play the game in total, now do you take the shot, right? And that's probably more realistic for what people's lives are. And so if you're looking between 2 things, I look at what is my upside and what is the likelihood that I'm going to get it? And I tend to go towards highest likelihood, highest return. Me personally. In the beginning, I knew fitness, and so I was like, I feel like I can do okay with this. And so I started a fitness business, right? I'd already paid down that ignorance debt and just had to learn the business side. To be fair, that's an endless game, but I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of the fitness side at that point. Once I understood the fitness side, and then I understood the gym side, then it was like, okay, now I need to understand the scaling to multiple location side. And then from there, it was the turnaround business. And then from there, it was scaling to thousands of locations. And each of those levels kind of add new complexity to the game. But I'm a big fan of like a stair-stepping concept, which is like you just keep getting better and you stack skills on top of the ones that you got. But one of the big things that I would warn everybody who's in this class is that there's a fallacy of the perfect pick, which is that you think that the business that you're going to start right now is for some reason going to be the business that you have for the rest of your life. Real quick, if you're trying to make your first dollar online, you can go to skool.com/games. We've got a whole system that's set up. It's a platform. You can start it for free. I've got instructional videos. I take a call every single week. And so if you do that, you can hop on the call on Monday and I'll say hi to you. Just let me know that you're brand new. And I can promise you it's not going to be. And that's tough to make that promise. But it's really, really, really unlikely. Most people who are entrepreneurs sprint in 3 to 5 year seasons. And so you do one thing for 3 to 5 years. And if you can, and you're smart about it, you want to stack the next thing that adds on top of the experience you gained from those 3 to 5 years, right? Where it gets tougher is where you have to net start somewhere new because it's kind of like losing that time. Now you learn some character traits, some interpersonal skills, things like that, but the domain specific or industry specific knowledge kind of dies there, which is kind of tough. So I like to just try and be directionally correct, which is like, is there an industry in general that I find not shitty? So like, don't try and find your passion because you're not good at anything yet. So like, why would you be passionate about it? Like, we're usually passionate about stuff we're good at. And you suck at most things that you haven't done much of. So trying to find passion for something that you haven't done a lot of is kind of silly in my opinion. And so one of my rules of entrepreneurship, if not the first rule of entrepreneurship, is use what you got. And so I'm going to weave that into the motivation, which is question 3. So, you know, when I was your age, that sounds weird. Wasn't that long ago. 13, 14 years ago. I was not like, I want to make a business that changes the world. And right now, you're probably in academia and you're at a young part of your life and it's exciting because you have unlimited opportunities, which is cool. But for me, I was not super passionate about really anything. I wanted to not be broke. I was very passionate about that. I would say that was my guiding mission. But what I did have a ton of was anger. I had a lot of anger, and a lot of shame, a lot of pride, a lot of ego, and that's what I used to get me out of not being motivated. And so I think that the academic world, and I know culture's tough right now, and you guys probably feel pulled in different directions. But I think a lot of these words that people throw around, like trauma and stuff like that, does not serve you. So I will save some contrarian views right now. But so what? No one cares. And so like, even if your uncle raped you your whole life, that's tough. And no one cares. No one's gonna care. And so the thing is like, if you blame your lack of success or your lack of motivation on some external circumstance because your dad didn't give you enough high fives or your mom didn't hug you enough as a kid, you give them the power. It means that you're giving your ability to be motivated you're putting it in someone else's hands. And for me, I was 19 when I realized that. How old are you guys in the room?
20, yeah, between like 19 and 22.
Okay, so I was y'all's age. And I realized that the people that I hated the most, which to me at the time were my parents, I was giving them all the power for why I was not going to do the things that I ultimately wanted to do. Like, I won't be successful because she didn't love me enough and he never gave me approval and blah, 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 blah. But at one point I was just like, no one cares. And so then I had all this anger that was kind of left over because I didn't have it pointed at them, and so I pointed at me. And then fearing the failure or the judgment of having my dad call me a failure was, for me, the biggest motivating factor I had. Because like, I didn't have the passion that many people talk about. I did have the rage, and so that's what I used. And so I'm not saying that you might have that. You might have a different emotion or a different feeling or different fuel, but use what you've got. And I think that'll get your head above water, and that'll get you moving. And then you'll start getting some wins. And then you'll start getting a little bit more directionally correct. And you'll start learning as you go. Because the difficulty that everybody has right now in this room is that you lack the perspective from which to make a judgment. So the easiest analogy I can think of here is like, if you are not into fitness at all, and you're trying to lose weight, and you read one article and it says bacon is bad for you. Another article says bacon is good for you. And somebody else says you should have high carb. Another person says you should do carnivore diet. Another person says you should be a vegan. And all these people look like they're in shape. And you can't tell the difference. It's because you don't have perspective. So all of these people, so you feel lost. And so the only thing that you can really do at that point is you just have to move in one of the directions. And you will start gaining knowledge, and then you will start pivoting, and you'll start moving in the direction that starts to serve you more. And you kind of feel your way to success. You iterate. So it's the fallacy of the perfect pick, is that you think that like you're gonna get the perfect diet on your first shot ever. Really unrealistic, unless you luck out and talk to like an absolute expert on the first shot, which is truly luck. But most people don't do that. They just read some articles and it makes some sense, and they're like, okay, well, all of these kind of are calorie restrictive. Okay, well, then that's generally the direction. So you start moving that way, right? And so I wanted to just hit on those points from a motivation perspective and from a what to do and picking the right choice. So far we have 3 of 7 covered. Thumbs? Okay, so in a show of thumbs, should I go, let's talk about the debt thing, or let's talk about what to sell? Debt or what to sell?
I think they want both, but let's start with it.
Okay, fine, we'll do that. So the risk that I took was an enormous risk, and it was probably not a wise risk. That being said, the context around me betting 100 grand when I had $1,000 in my bank account was that I was a 6-time gym owner that had done 30 plus turnarounds. This was not my first rodeo. I knew that if I spent 100 grand, I had a very high likelihood that I was gonna make it back. The risk, the real bet, was that I didn't have a processor. And I just was betting that I could get one set up by the time I would need to pay the credit card off. So the bet wasn't so much that I was gonna bet 100 grand and not make the money, because I knew the system worked. I've been doing it for 5 years at that point. And so that, just to give you guys context. And so for you guys, if you're like, oh, I want to go, like, you should not go into debt for your first business, in my opinion. Because you have, I'm going to cuss. You have no fucking clue what you're doing, right? The biggest risk that you have is ignorance. You have no clue what you're doing, and that's okay. That's the whole game, right? The whole game is that you continue to learn. But from the debt perspective, you already have ignorance debt, and you're going to be paying that off. You don't want to pay financial debt and ignorance debt at the same time, because those compound. Okay. Do you guys all want to start businesses? Or is this like just a college credit?
Hands, how many of you want to be entrepreneurs? Yeah. Okay, it's a lot harder than when we started this semester.
Okay, that's good. I mean, not good. I mean, good or bad. I was more just curious because I remember I was in an entrepreneur class when I was in college, and this guy who owned Assurian, which was a massive cell phone insurance business, like came in and talked, and I was like, man, this guy's smart. I have no idea what I'm doing. I think a lot of people, after I was walking out of the class, like didn't have any interest in becoming entrepreneurs. At least the vast majority of my class did not become entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs has like a really like cool sound right now. It's kind of in. I think when I started, it wasn't cool. And so like at the end of the day, like you're just selling shit. Like that's all you're doing. You're just getting a stranger, you're just solving someone's problem and selling stuff and getting them to give you money for it. And so I remember in my little entrepreneurial class, everyone was very product driven. So it was very much like, I'm gonna make a widget that does that. We're gonna create waterproof headphones, which by the way, didn't exist back then. That was like high tech. And so everyone kind of did their whole pitch of like the team thing, right? And my team started we did a toilet seat that you could lift with your foot, like a trash can. You know, those little trash things, like, so that way the seat would lift up, right? And we like looked at the margins, what could we sell it for? It was like, you know, our version of the squatty potty. But the thing is like, I remember doing that and then never actually thinking I would ever do this business. And what most of you guys don't know is that like, it is so easy to crush other people who are in business. And so that may seem like very different from what I just said about like, you don't know what you're doing. Let me bridge the gap. Most people don't try that hard. Like think about the people in this class you guys know, there are some people here who don't try for shit, right? Now imagine that person has a business. It's easy to beat them. It's really not hard. Like you have to show up, like, and you already beat half the field, right? Like answer your phone on time, like respond to emails when customers ask you questions, like actually tell people about the thing that you have, right? Like try and do a good job, ask them to leave a review, like not rocket science, but guess what? All of those things are like homework and people don't do it. So a lot of like crushing it in business is really just doing the basics that other people won't do. Like a lot of the school lessons that you have right now apply. The same people who don't work hard also don't work hard. Like it's the same, right? And so in terms of picking what to sell, this is my roundabout point here, is that you could start a dry cleaning business tomorrow and make money doing it. You could start a lawn care business tomorrow and make money doing it. You could start a house cleaning business. You could start commercial cleaning. You could start there's a zillion different businesses that already exist, and all you have to do is do it better. Like that's it. Like you become a multi-decamillionaire just doing it better. That's it. So for some of you guys who are like, I want to get a business and I don't know what to sell, my advice is, number one is you have experience or some exposure to business in some way. And usually that's in the form of like what your parents do, like you've been exposed to industries, like just over the kitchen table, in the background, like my parents are eye doctors. I know a shitload of stuff about eyes. I will never use it. But if I wanted to get into something, like I happen to have spent years working out, and so that was something that I was passionate about. And so like that was something that I knew something about, and that was kind of like my base level of knowledge. But some of you guys know other shit, either from your parents or your own little side interests and whatnot. Like those are great places that you can start businesses in because you have suffered some problem. And so rather than try and think like, I'm gonna look for a problem in the marketplace and then try and solve it, a lot of times like, what problems have you suffered from personally that you think suck? Like, I hate waiting in line for sandwiches at lunch. Okay, cool, we'll create a line waiting thing. Like you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure these things out. A lot of times it's just doing something faster or making it easier than what it currently is. That's it. Is that like mind blowing? It's like just do whatever anyone else is doing and just do it faster or do it easier. And if you can do both, you can charge more money. That's it. All right. And the thing is that that allows you to, like, you can just apply faster and easier to any business model that's out there and create another business. So you don't need to be that original. Okay, so we covered debt, which is don't do it unless you know what you're doing. I like the quote from Warren Buffett, which says, if you're smart, you don't need it, and if you're dumb, you shouldn't use it. And so, like, I was in a tough spot, and I had already gotten 6 guys to quit their jobs, and I didn't know I was going to lose my processing in that meantime. And so it was kind of a hard spot of like, these guys just quit their jobs. I'm pretty sure this is going to work, but I don't know it's going to work, and I have to just hustle my ass off to figure out a way to get processing set up. That was my problem to solve. And it took me a month while we're just collecting all these contracts that I couldn't process to get 2 processors set up, and then eventually we were able to catch up on the money that was owed. But it seems like a very risky move from the outside, but the only real risk was getting the processing set up. And I ended up going with like a high risk casino online, like all the shady businesses that exist out there. They would process for like an 8% fee, which for anyone who's curious, that's egregious. Like Stripe is 2.99. So it's like getting an 8% top line rev share on your business that goes to nothing but just being able to process money. And then on top of that, they had a 10% reserve, which means 18% of my top line didn't come to me. So if you're like familiar with some of the margins, I'm sure that you've been talking about, like some businesses run 20% margins. If you give 18% off the top, it gets real tough. Wow. So anyways, that was all I had. So I was dealing with the devil. And so I had to make those decisions, but it ended up working out. Okay, debt, motivation, what to sell, unexpected reward. Why would we ask that question? I don't know, but we covered it. What to do, which is the leverage and probability, which Amber talked about, or Amber asked about. And then we have, I think there was a question, you had start a business, which was the first question. You had skipping the process, and then $100 team of 5, what would I do? Okay, so I'm gonna go $100 team of 5, what would I do? For 300. If you first off, it's kind of like, it's weird that you'd be in teams of like, normally it'll just be you, right? It'll be you and then maybe a partner. And so I'll give you a couple words on partners real quick. Like, it's not realistic because right now you've been forced to be in the groups of 5 and there's probably someone dragging ass who's not going to do their job. And normally you just fire them, but you can't do that in your classroom setting. And so you just have to deal with this person. And then you have to deal with whatever culture you have with the 5 people that are working with you. And so you sure, you have to learn team dynamics, but in the real world, you just get rid of those people, you'd switch teams. So, one, you will probably be on your own, and if you're not, you're going to be with a partner. Now, when you're picking the partner, and this is important, you want somebody who's not your buddy. Not to say that it's bad to be your buddy, but you want the primary reason that you are going to work with this person in the business is that they have either money, skill, or time that you do not have. So if you're going to partner with somebody who's going to front you capital because you want to open a storefront, okay, they've got money you don't have, and you've got time, and hopefully some skill that they don't have, right? If you are going to go 50-50 and you're both going to put your savings into something, well, you both have money, okay, well that cancels out. You both have time, okay. And so then it's just, does the other person have an entirely diverse set of skills compared to you? Most people who are younger both have no idea what they're doing, which means that you're really just splitting the pie in half for one person extra to work. And that is probably one of the most expensive decisions that you will ever make. You cut everything you make in half. So, in my opinion, you better be darn sure that this person is going to double the value of the business. Because if you can make enough money on your own to pay someone to help you, then you keep 100% of your business and you just have to pay some overhead to them. Does that make sense? The biggest mistake early entrepreneurs make is they partner with the wrong person. I say this having 8 failed partnerships before I learned this lesson. And it's because I love the idea of doing business with buddies. And so I have many of the scars to say that. Now I haven't made those mistakes in a long time, but it took me a long time to learn it, which is if you both have the same opinion and same time and same money and same skills, one of you is not required. And eventually one of you will resent the other because both of you will think you're working harder than the other person.